DMV test. I talked about in the first week that I hate more than anything else the DMV test. I think it is crazy that if you missed one sign, somebody say one sign, that you failed the whole test. I think that's crazy, right? I lived off of 80%. I'm not encouraging nobody to do that. I'm just saying. That's how I made it through. Understand, people? All right. So I'm like, man, this sign test is so important. And I went and talked to a couple people I knew worked at DMV, and I know a guy who's the commissioner there, and he explained, you have to be able to see the signs and understand what they mean so that you can make quick responses. The challenge with so many of us sometimes in life is that we don't see the signs until it's too late. We've already walked down a path too far. We've already made too many decisions that have spiraled out of control. We've already invested too much. We've already spent too much time in conversation, and not until it's too late do we recognize it, until the signs were there, but we missed them. And so I want to start by taking a sign test. We got it on the screen. Can we put it on the screen? All right, so I want everybody to text the number 22333. 22333. And the message that you're going to put in it, all right, just go with me. This is going to be crazy. Top Truck 366. That's one word, all right? We're going to say it again. Top Truck 366. Here we go again. The number is 22333. And the words in the message are one word, Top Truck, TOPTRUCK, 366, all right? 366. Then here's the question. You should get a response to your phone. We're gonna take a sign question. We're gonna take a sign question. The detour sign. Everybody say detour. The detour sign is a critical sign in your life as you're driving. And I want to ask you today, all right, all the marbles is on this to see if y'all keep y'all license or not in the room. When you see a detour sign, you should, A, turn around, B, make the next available right turn, C, keep driving and look for further directions, or D, call 411 for further instructions. Again, when you see a detour sign, you should A, turn around, B, now some of y'all, don't be confident in your answer now. I'm telling you now. Don't be letting the screen sway you, right? B, make the next available right turn, C, keep driving and look for further directions, or D, call 411 for further instructions. Give y'all like another minute and 10 seconds. It's full? Oh, well, bless the Lord. How y'all know it's full? Where it say that at? I don't see it up there. Poll is full and no longer accepting responses. Don't put the arrow on it. That's childish. I didn't see that. We didn't practice it before with people. I didn't know it did that. All right. How many people be honest in the room and said turn around? Let me see the turn around people in the room. Don't lie. Thank God bless you. I got two. Amen. When we look at the detour sign, it is such an imperative thing to understand that whenever detours come in our life, it is not a symbol that we should turn around. It is not a symbol that life should stop. And while we got the right answer on a driving test, many of us live our lives very opposite. Many of us get to a place in our lives, and when we see difficulty, and when we see things that don't look like we're comfortable with, and when we see a direction that seems like it's going to be more hazardous, or there seems to be some signs that things are getting a little rough and difficult, we turn around. We go back to the place that we feel most comfortable. We go back to the place that we understand how to navigate. We go back to the relationships that we know how to have conversations in. Come on, somebody. We go back to the people in our lives who we've known the longest. We start calling people, asking for instructions instead of keeping moving forward. Everybody in this room has a Fab Five, a group of people that you call when things are going wrong. And what I want to ask you as you leave this sermon today is, are all 5 people in your circle qualified to give you on-spot instruction? Oh, that what must be preaching today. I tell you. Because some of us, if we really evaluated our crew, we asking some people about relationship advice that ain't never been committed. I know they're not going to come back, Lee. I knew it. We asking folk about finance advice. They got no savings. We like, what you think, girl? I just got a refund check. What you think I should do? Girl, let's go shopping. No. You got to pay that back. We asking people about starting businesses and asking people about making decisions that can impact the rest of our lives. We're asking people about should we go to church or should we not. We're asking people about spiritual and emotional and mental decisions, heavy decisions. And we're looking, we see the signs, but instead of keeping moving forward, it gets difficult and it gets like it's going to be an uncomfortable journey. And we know that it's going to take us in some places that we've never been before. A detour is an alternate direction, but you got to keep moving forward and look for further directions. Because there's never a detour sign without further direction. And some of us, the greatest challenge in our lives is the difficulty that we face. Because when we approach the signs of difficulty, we choose to turn around. We choose to call on all the wrong resources sometimes instead of pushing forward and awaiting further direction. I want to go real quick to James chapter 1. I'm going to read 2 verses for you today. James chapter 1. We're going to read verses 2 through 4. And then after that, we're going to go to 2 Corinthians 12, 8 through 10. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Because there are 2 passages here that are going to help us understand the difficulties and the detours of our lives. Every single one of us in this room will face detours. We will face difficulty. We will face opposition. We will face discomfort. But how you deal with that moment, how you drive forward, how you look for further direction will impact the course of your life. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing, everybody say testing, it's going to be an important word in a second, of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work in you so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Another translation says in New Living, dear brothers and sisters, when you face troubles of any kind, consider it an opportunity of great joy, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance, everybody say endurance, has a chance to grow. And when it is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 12 really quick. 2 Corinthians 12, we're going to read verses 8 through 10. 2 Corinthians 12, verses 8 through 10. Reads like this: 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, this messes me up because this messes up many of our theology. We've been taught that whenever we pray, God answers our prayers. And so then we become disgruntled with God, or we become distracted from our relationship with God when God doesn't respond the way our grandmother told us he would, the way our church told us that he would. 3 times I asked the Lord, take this away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly, Paul says, about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecution, and difficulty. For when I am weak, somebody say, I am strong. I want to preach today again from the topic of difficulty by design. In this passage, this last passage we just read, we encounter this guy named Paul. And Paul is in a very interesting situation because he's been dealing with some persecution and some hardship and some opposition and some detours in his life. He had a plan. He started on a journey. Everything was working out great. You know, when you understand Paul's backdrop, Paul was a killer of Christians. Paul didn't like Christians. He grew up in a culture that was against Christians. And so he was actually the best one at the job. And they had sent Paul on a journey to kill more Christians or to bring them back in shackles. And so Paul is on this journey and he encounters the presence of God. And his life changes forever. Now, here's where it gets interesting for many of us, because we'll come to church or we'll come to a service and we experience the presence of God and we make a decision to say, God, I'm going to live for you and you have my life. And you know, we sing William Murphy songs like, give myself away. Was that William McDowell? My bad. And, we be so excited and, we be ready to leave. And then something happens. We start to experience difficulty. Wait a minute, God. I didn't get in a relationship with you for things to get more difficult. Some of us feel that way about our lives. We thought certain friendships were going to make things easier, but then once we got into them, we realized this made my life more difficult. Some of us don't raise your hand, don't nod your head, don't make no sudden movements, but you thought that about marriage. You said, this was the most joyous day of my life, and then I jumped the broom and realize this is kind of difficult. For some of you, you decided on majors. Notice the difference between the marriage one and the majors one. The marriage one, everybody was like, don't move. Don't say nothing. No, son, I'm happy, baby. I love you. It's never been difficult. You're just great. You're awesome. What would I have done without you? You decided on majors because it looked great. It sounded like a great idea when you started until you got to chemistry. Until you got to orgo. Come on, somebody. For me, it was math, all of them, from the first one. Algebra 1. And everything seemed good. But then difficulty presented itself. Here's Paul writing, and he's in a difficult situation, and he keeps asking God, take this away from me. And God's response changes. It's this is epic, y'all. This should change the way we think about difficulty in our lives. God's response is, you've missed it because you think the difficulty is there to destroy you, but I've designed it to develop you. He said, it's in your weakness that I'm going to make you strong. You have to understand a moment of weakness to understand how to become strong. Instead of me feeling like this isn't going to work, I've learned that this I can delight in. I can delight in it because it's going to show me something about myself. But here's this is key. Everybody say this is key. Because he first has to be, see, difficulty is a battle mentally. The challenge with many of us as we go through this year won't be how much we want to accomplish, it's how we respond to difficulty. And when we start to see the detours and the difficult places of our life emerge, we have to keep moving forward. But it's how you move forward mentally that will determine the source of your direction. Watch this. So look at Paul. Paul says, I'm experiencing difficulty. God, I've been praying. God, I've been crying. God, take this away from me. And God's response is, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Now, what he shows us here is, this is very key, y'all, that you can't have victory over your difficulty without vulnerability. Say it again. You cannot have victory over your difficulty without vulnerability. And most of us have been conditioned in our culture to always have it together. And so what we do is we go to God with it all together. We go to God as if we're really not upset, and if like we're really not losing it, and like we're really not on the last thread, and like God. But if you ever got to a place where you would be vulnerable with God, vulnerability gives you access to strength. But it requires you to be vulnerable. God, I believe with all my heart, some of us are the best prayers in the world with no power. Because we think power lies in how well we speak and not how vulnerable we speak. And it is so important as we go through this year that we realize that the difficulty in our lives is designed to develop you, it's designed to strengthen you. But you cannot become so comfortable saying, I got it together and this is all cool. You have to be willing to be vulnerable with God. And that's what Paul does. He says, look, I'm letting you know I've tried to do this 3 times. I'm crying, I'm praying. Hey, I need you to take care of this. But God, I will learn to delight even when you don't do what I think you should do. I will learn to accept your plan even when I can't figure it out. And when you become vulnerable, you make room for God to fill a place that many of us have been faking like it's been full. Like, God, I'm good. You know, like I think we treat God like anybody, you know, ever ask somebody, you know, you can visibly see they frustrated. You be like, yo, how you doing? I'm fine. No, you're not. Clearly, you're not talking. Especially folk who talk all the time. We all got one friend who you be like, now, come on. Come on. You typically dominate the entire conversation. It's always one friend. That's me. I can be honest. But they don't know how to be vulnerable. God wants our vulnerability today. Because it's in our vulnerability that he will show us how our difficulty is making us stronger. James very similarly, has a lesson for us, but his lesson kind of takes the message a bit further. It takes the message to another level because, okay, it's great to leave here and be like, okay, God has given me strength through my difficulty. But what does that really mean? What does that look like? What are the benefits, or what does difficulty produce? And so James is having a conversation when he writes his letter to all of these Christians who have been dispersed. And you got to understand that this day and time, Christians were being hunted down. They were being killed. And so James is writing this letter to them who are scattered all over the place because they're scared and because they're going through this difficult moment. And James helps them to see something. He starts off by saying, consider it great joy. Now, this is very strange. Can we just pause for a second and be realistic? Because whenever somebody starts off a letter, like if you ever got a text message, consider it great joy, you're going to be like, yes, I don't know what's about to happen next, but it got to be good. I mean, if that's how you're going to lead off, I'm expecting some exciting news behind that. Consider it great joy, and look at what he says next. When you face trials. Wait a minute, James. Wait a minute. This is not, you started off, I think you sent the text to the wrong person. I don't understand. Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you will know that the testing of your faith produces, in one translation, endurance. Endurance. Well, I want to start by this word testing, and then we're going to move into the points really quick, because this word testing in the Greek is literally a word that was used by the silversmith. It was used by the silversmith. And what the silversmith would do was they would heat up the silver, and they would get it to a particular temperature. And as the heat rose to the surface, the impurities would come to the surface. And so as the impurities rose, the silversmith would scrape off the silver, testing it. And then he would heat it up again. And as the impurities rose to the surface, he would scrape it off. And then he would repeat this pattern over and over and over again. He would heat it up and wait for the impurities to rise to the surface and then scrape it off. Heat it up, see the impurities, scrape it off. And the silversmith knew that the silver was tested and prepared and ready for productivity when he could see his reflection in it. See, the reason why some of us are facing trials and tribulations and we should consider it pure joy is not because God is trying to kill us, but God has said, I'm trying to see my reflection in you. And there's some impure places of your life that you don't want to let go of. There's some impure places of all of our lives that we don't want to release. There's some impure relationships that we don't want to let go of. There's some impure things that we've been thinking, that we've been hiding from others, but God sees it all. There's some impure habits that we have. Somebody. That God said the only way for me to bring them to the surface is for me to put some heat under your life sometimes. Every now and then I have to make some difficulty happen, but it's designed not to destroy you, but it's designed to develop you. And so you have to be willing to deal with the heat sometimes so that I can get the impurities out of your life. And many of us spend so much time complaining, but God is creating. We're disappointed, but God is developing. We're sitting there, we're bothered, but God is building something in us. Because watch this, this is key. Put this on the screen. Because the true goal of discipleship is reflection, not religion. God is not trying to see you become more religious. He's trying to see you reflect him more. Now, let me pause here because I don't want to seem like I'm against religion. Religion serves a great purpose in our lives. It helps us to create habits and great routines, and religion helps us to develop things. But if you get stuck on only religion and never develop a reflection of Jesus, because there's a lot of religious people who don't look like Jesus. There are a lot of people who know what to say and where to be at the right time. There are a lot of people who pay their tithes. There are a lot of people who do stuff, but their purity of their heart, they haven't sat with God through difficulty so he could remove impurity. And many of us will say today, I want to be a disciple, I want to be a disciple, I want to be a disciple. But the true goal of discipleship is, do you reflect? Can God see himself in you? Can God see himself when you are dealing with your attitude? Can God see his patterns and his behavior when he's dealing with you on an issue at your job or an issue in your relationship or an issue in your mind or issue in your heart? Can he see his reflection in you? Look at somebody, say reflect, reflect. There's this the book called The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. It's one of my favorite books in the world. Anybody read it before? Anybody read it? Good stuff, right? Come on here, Bruce. All right. Actually, you know who put me on? Chad. Chad put me on. Shouts out to Chad. I love you, Chad. God bless you. You ain't been to church in a while. We'll talk about it later. Chad is one of my frat brothers, for those who don't know. So I can pick on him like that. I can pick on him like that. When he see this video, he gonna call me and say some words that I can't say in church. Bless his heart. I love Chad. Chad told me to read this book called The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. And when I read it, there was this reference to Greek mythology in it that I thought was so inspiring. It said that there was this person named Narcissus, and Narcissus was a hunter, and so he was traveling one day, and Narcissus saw his reflection. And Narcissus got so wrapped up in his reflection, and when his enemy recognized that his weak point was looking at his reflection, he led him in battle one day to a pool of water where he got stuck looking at his reflection. And because he stayed there so long looking at himself, he eventually fell and drowned. This is where the word narcissistic comes from. And I think many of us are narcissistic Christians because we're dying because we have a greater desire to see our own reflection than to see God's. We are consumed with how we look and the accolades that we will attain and the things that look good for us. But we miss that the greatest goal of our lives should not to be how we reflect ourselves, but how we reflect our Savior. And when you leave this moment, I want to tell you that difficulty can do three things for you. Difficulty can do three things for you if you don't allow it to deter you, but to develop you. Three things. The first one, very clearly in the text, it says endurance. Everybody say endurance. So endurance, watch this, does not change how you feel going through the process. It just enables you to make it through the process. See, for some of us, if we really be honest in this room, we making it through some stuff not because we know a whole bunch of scriptures to quote, not because we figured out how many people to call, but simply because we've just made up in our mind that I won't quit because it's difficult. Because we've made up in our mind that we will endure to the end of this process. Because we've made up in our hearts and in our minds that I don't care what the enemy sends my way, and I don't care who talks about me, and I don't care how bad it hurts, and I don't care what I got to go through. I'm going to make it to the end of this process. I got to see what God got for me when I get there. Some of us just enduring. Can we be honest today? We have to endure. And I don't want to be a hypocrite today because I often tell everybody that the sign of a believer is how you deal with adversity. But sometimes we hit some places in our life, y'all, where we just don't know how to deal with adversity. Where we just not, can we just be honest in the room? Like there's some seasons of your life where you're not super spiritual about it. You're just upset and making a decision. I don't know why God is doing this. I don't know why it's this difficult, but I'm just going to endure. Some people know this story in the room. Some people don't. But one of those seasons of my life, matter of fact, I've told it here before, but one of those seasons of my life is when I was told we wouldn't be able to have children. When doctors told me that because of the chemotherapy and the cancer that I had, that children would never be possible. And again, I tell people all the time, don't misconstrue that standing up here makes you immune to difficulty. Because when we hit that roadblock, when we hit that detour, I can tell you now, the last thing I was thinking about was, let me just go home and pray about it. You know, that's what we think the pastor do. Like, the pastor hit difficulty, and then he just be like, Lord, I consider it pure joy. All of this. Because you're developing me. You know, your grandmama do that? Because you're developing me. No, it didn't happen. I went home and I was mad at God. I didn't understand. I said, God, why? I don't get it. I preach, I sing, I do whatever you ask me to do. Why am I losing? Why is this difficulty getting the best of me? And I pleaded with God. He didn't respond on my timeline. And y'all know the shout cue, you know. They here now. The kids here now. Lord have mercy. Is they here? 2 kids in diapers. God did it. He definitely did it. Running down the house. Sit down. God, I'm pleading with you. Put him to sleep. But the beauty of it is we endured. There were some days where we didn't talk for 24 hours straight because we were just crying and we were frustrated, but we endured. There were some seasons when we just felt like, okay, you know what, I want to believe that God is going to change the situation, but all the facts and all the statistics and all the reports say it can't happen, but I refuse to give up on God. I'm going to just endure. Because if you get to the place of endurance, there's something else waiting for you. The text tells us that once endurance has run its course, there are 2 more things that you receive through the product of difficulty. The first one is evolution. Everybody say evolution. So they identified in the passage as maturity. They said, I want to read this verse for you one time. Hey, go back to real time, Darius. Take me back to James 1, 2 through 4 real quick, because I want everybody to see this with me. So once perseverance is finished, or endurance in the other translation, its work, you will be mature. Now, this is key. This is key because some of us know people who've grown up in age but not in maturity. And sometimes the same thing happens to us spiritually. We grow in the years we've been in church, but not in our spiritual fortitude. We've grown in the amount of ministries we serve on, but we haven't grown in our spiritual fortitude. We've grown in the amount of scriptures we know, but not in our spiritual fortitude. And in order to truly get something from difficulty, for it to be designed for your development, you have to get to a place where you say, I don't want to just make it through. I want to know something more. That's the true sign of maturity, when you know something more. When you would have responded this way, but now you respond this way. When you would have done this with your resources, but now you do this with your resources. When you would have reacted a certain way, when you would have let it tear you apart, but now you realize because of what you've been through that, hey, I endured that, and so I learned something from that that matured me. I learned something from that that evolved who I am. It's a statement of evolution. God is trying to evolve all of us so that we can deal with the fire differently the next time. Watch this, y'all. Difficulty is inevitable, but evolution is optional. Say it again. Difficulty is inevitable. Evolution is optional. For some of us, we've been facing the same trials and the same tribulations the same way. Y'all kind of quiet today. I know there are about 5 people who with me who can say, man, I've been dealing with this the same way. I've been responding with the same attitude for the last 5 years. I've been responding with the same answers. I've been doing the same thing with my money. I've been doing the same thing with my habits. I've been doing the same thing in all my relationships. And I keep blaming everybody else. And I keep pointing all the other fingers. But if you choose to endure and then evolve, mature through the situation. The other day we went to, my birthday was last week, January 5th. That was last week, right? Okay. Shouts out, your birthday too. Any January birthdays in the room, make some noise real quick. All right, yeah. Y'all gonna try to act like y'all want to show us no love? Okay. Okay. Y'all just selfish. Y'all selfish. That's the problem. How selfish. Jesus, heat it up, impure, move it out. The reason God can't elevate you yet in some places in your life is because you haven't learned how to deal with the fire on this season yet. And if you ever learn to deal with the fire in this season and let him make out the impurities in your life, God said that the evolution that you will see will be elevation. Yeah, I want to take you higher, but you got to evolve in this season. You got to be able to deal with the fire of this level. Everybody say the fire. But here's the last thing that you got to understand that difficulty is designed to do. Not only is it designed to give us endurance, not only is it designed to give us evolution, but it is designed to help us emulate Christ. So emulation is a product. And it says in the text that they became complete, lacking for nothing. This is so imperative, and it's the last thing I'm going to say for the day, this last point. The enemy understands the value of emptiness. Let me explain what I mean by that. Because for many of us, you will emulate based on the empty places of your life. So watch this. So the people who are most excited, in the definition of emulation, let me bring it here real quick. It says to match or reproduce. People who are feel like they need to be loved, if that's an empty place in your life, you will always be trying to reproduce relationships because that's the empty space. People who feel like, man, I've never been respected will always emulate or try to reproduce a certain security or confidence because that's an empty space in their life. People who feel like I don't know what to do and I'm insecure, they will always emulate something based on their emptiness. That's why it's so important that we allow God to fill the empty places of our life. Because when Christ fills the empty spaces, then the only thing left to emulate is him. But when we let relationships, you ever known somebody who they were dating somebody and over time you say, you starting to sound like them? Or somebody who's been hanging out with a new environment or a new room and they start to know language and lingo and you start to think, man, they're changing a little bit. Why? Because you emulate based on your emptiness. If they're meeting a need, you emulate who meets that need, who fills that gap, who fills that space. And when you get to a place where you say, I've tried everybody and I've tried everything and I've recognized that only Christ can fill my empty spaces and fill me up, then you get to a season of your life where you say the only thing left to emulate is him. He recognizes that the difficulty is not designed to deter you. You shouldn't turn around. You shouldn't give up. You should learn how to say, okay, this is the sign that God is about to develop something in my life. What is God developing? Endurance. What is God developing? Evolution or my maturity. What is God developing? God is developing in me a reflection of him. He wants me to emulate him. How can I emulate my Savior if I never deal with difficulty? That was his entire journey. God said, I'm trying to get something out of you. But first, I got to be able to heat up some places in your life. The difficulty is not designed to deter you. It is designed to develop you. I want to read this last passage to you, Lamentations 3. Nobody really goes to this book of the Bible ever. But it's an entire book, talks about some people dealing with difficulty. People who have the right to be upset in a moment. People who are frustrated. People who are sad. You can come on up, Rivers. And I want you to read this verse. And this is in the Message translation, but it said, God's loyal love couldn't have run out. That's supposed to be couldn't. We'll change it later. His merciful love couldn't have dried up. They're created new every morning. How great your faithfulness. I'm sticking with God. This is my favorite part. I say it over and over. He's all I've got left. I'm sticking with God. I say it over and over. He's all I got left. Anybody ever been in a place in difficulty in your life where you say, you know what, I really can't figure this out. And you know what, I've been pleading with God to take this away, and I've been praying, and I've been doing everything I feel like I'm supposed to do, and I still can't figure it out. So God, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to endure. And I'm sticking with you because you're all I got left.